I think every company needs to align on that mission and vision for their employees, but companies do exist to increase shareholder value. Jobs exist to feed families. There's a lot in that.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angela Voss, the CEO of Marketing Architects, and Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Hello.
Hello.
We're back with our thoughts on some recent marketing news, always trying to root our opinions in data, research, and what drives business results. Today, we are talking about brand purpose, or the idea that brands should contribute positively to society, or why a brand exists outside of making a profit. We'll talk about where brand purpose comes from. Does purpose lead to better marketing outcomes? And should your brand have one? I'll kick us off, as I always do, with some research. I chose an article from Nick Asbury for this episode because I heard him recently on the Marketing Book podcast. He has a new book out called The Road to Hell: How Purposeful Business Leads to Bad Marketing and a Worse World. And that might give you a little hint as to how he feels about brand purpose, but hang with me, he's really an expert, so I think sharing his point of view is definitely worthwhile. The article I chose is called Good Intentions Lead to Bad Marketing: Why Purpose is Missing the Mark, and it was published by Marketing Week. And here's what he had to say. 181 CEOs signed the Statement on the Purpose of the Corporation in 2019. The goal of this document was to prioritize social purpose at the corporate level. And the idea of brand purpose carries with it slogans like "do well by doing good" or "be on the right side of history." And Asbury believes, while these brands had good intentions at the time, it's led to bad marketing. I'll quote directly from him here. If purpose is what an organization is for, then it should be relevant that society designates some organizations as for-profit and others as not-for-profit, because we treat not-for-profits differently. We tax them differently. We expect them to tackle social issues. We haven't expected the same from for-profit businesses because they don't have the same social license that nonprofits do. Asbury goes right in and gives Dove as an example, which is typically hailed as a success in brand purpose. Dove is now famous for an ad campaign that ran for 2 decades, which was based off the finding that only 2% of women consider themselves beautiful. I'm sure we've all seen these ads before. This came from a study that actually found 72% of women considered themselves of average beauty, and 13% considered themselves below average. And most women didn't consider beauty important compared to family, friends, faith, career, and other factors. So Dove's whole campaign appears to be based off of misinterpreted data, but Asbury points out that there is an advantage in social issues for brands because, unlike economic issues, things like the beauty standard for women is not definitively solved. So your brand can remain in permanent crusade mode. But you might be wondering, doesn't Gen Z demand purpose from brands? Asbury points to 2 of Gen Z's favorite brands to demonstrate why this is not always the case: TikTok and Shein. Asbury ends his article with this call to action. Marketers can do social good by producing effective marketing that helps the businesses that sustain entire families and communities. Too many brands shout preachy messages that center themselves as the hero and implore people to join the conversation on a social issue they might have discovered 5 minutes ago. So we're going to have a deeper discussion today on brand purpose, but for now, and Rob, would love to know your initial reaction to that article.
I actually really loved the Dove campaign. And another one, I know, Rob, you and I have talked about this one too, always, their Run Like a Girl campaign. Loved that one too. Neither of which I'm a consumer for. I don't buy either one of those brands. So I think that's what we're talking about. I feel like our performance marketing roots gave us a bit of a leg up on this topic, because I remember when this movement was getting going, I recall us being pretty skeptical about what might come from it. Not that it's wrong to have passion around social issues, but using your marketing as a means to communicate that to your audience might have a negative impact on sales. And I think that happened a lot. We all read those articles. I think back in our radio days, we would traffic hundreds of new creative tests per month. And we've tested every influence principle in the book and found that when looking for immediate response on sales anyway, a message of good doing was often, maybe not always, but often a tough sell into consumers. Don't you think, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to say I disagreed with you on the Always campaign. I thought that was an example of, a great inspirational commercial that could have been for any product related to women or anyone who has a daughter, but it was not at all connected to the brand. And I think that's what Nick is getting to here, which is if you're going to borrow equity from a cause, how does it truly connect with your brand? I think Dove, no pun intended, they got on their own soapbox, preached to us all about what beauty really is. But at the end of the day, it didn't really connect with what do you do as a product in your value proposition that can be cause worthy. Dove could rid the world of body odor, right? And anyone who's been to a DMV lately knows that is a real humanitarian issue. So how can they focus their campaign on a cause that's truly inherent to their brand? For instance, a great brand that really lives into its value proposition is NVIDIA. If you look at NVIDIA, they are about solving the world's biggest challenges through AI and accelerated computing. I believe that's a cause that they truly can deliver on. And obviously, they're the darling brand right now that everybody talks about. But you can even go to like a classic like Disney. They're about entertaining people and inspiring people around the world through the power of storytelling. They are about curing boredom. And I believe that they do that. And I think that that's a cause that rallies your internal team. And I think it's a cause that people in the marketplace can believe that you truly deliver on. I really like what Nick was saying. And I know we'll talk more about how to do it right later. But I just think when you're a brand that can truly lean in on what you deliver on, awesome. But if you're co-opting a bumper sticker issue, you're not going to win.
First of all, I agree with you, Ange. I liked both those campaigns from Always and Dove as well. I'm also not a customer of theirs, so that sort of tracks. So there's a difference between like enjoying the marketing and the campaign and it actually working. I think everyone always gives this example. It's kind of tired now, but the Pepsi Kendall Jenner is like a perfect example of what did Pepsi have to do with that conversation? Nothing. So it didn't really serve them. But sometimes I wonder if maybe also connecting to purpose is just good marketing. Like, is that purpose or is that just connecting to who you are as a brand? Like in the case of NVIDIA, like that's their mission. But we'll get more into a deeper discussion on purpose later. Rob, before we do that, I really wanted to ask for a history lesson here to ground the discussion. And I'm wondering how far back this one goes, but please tell us about the history of brand purpose.
It's time for Rob's history lesson.
So let's travel back to the 1960s and 70s. Picture this. Companies start to realize they should care about more than just their wallets. Peace, love, and profits becomes the mantra. It's the corporate world's flower power moment. Companies like Johnson & Johnson started creating the first formal corporate social responsibility programs, otherwise known as CSRs. Fast forward that mixtape to the 80s and 90s, and CSR is growing up, and the term shared value enters the scene. Like the nerdy kid who suddenly became popular. Business thought leaders like Michael Porter and Mark Kramer from HBR argue businesses can make money while also making the world a better place. Knock, knock, who's there? Everyone's new catchphrase, brand purpose. Brands start telling themselves they should stand for something bigger. So brand purpose was standing tough as the new kid on the block. See what I did there? The early 2000s are all about cool and green. Brands like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's are the rock stars of sustainability. Social media rises and suddenly brands are under the microscope. Companies start sweating, realizing they can't hide behind glossy ads anymore. Transparency is in, so you better make sure there's no boogies in your nose. On to the 2010s. Brand purpose hits the mainstream thanks to Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. People start asking brands, why do you exist? Like existential teenagers questioning everything. But hold on, despite all the fanfare, some say brand purpose is just a big old bottle of snake oil. Critics argue that brand purpose promises a lot, but delivers on a little. Scandals pop up, like the infamous Pepsi ad with Kendall Jenner, showing what happens when brands try too hard to be woke and fail miserably. So where are we now? Today, the debate rages on. How do you weave authentic purpose into your business without looking like a disingenuous tryhard plotting to profit from co-opting a cause?
Rob, that was perfect. That was a great history lesson. I feel like that sets us up really well for this discussion because you mentioned at the end that Some people, like I think Nick Asbury, have that point of view that brand purpose is mostly snake oil. So let's talk a little bit about the value of brand purpose. Is there any case, do we think, for a brand to lean into brand purpose as a marketing strategy?
I think Rob hit it earlier, nail on the head, like your sentiments. It's the opposite of the purpose washing that has gone on. When your mission and your purpose are aligned, that's when it makes sense to me. Your company started with those intentions in mind versus, oh, we sell stuff and then now this is a trendy thing. So how do we attach ourselves to it? Just focusing on that like significant social or environmental issue, I do think when done authentically and from the core of what the company is about can create some emotional connections. I would think of like a Patagonia would be a good example of that. They're on a mission to save the planet. Or like even what Tom's has done with the buy a pair, give a pair, however they say that, right? Warby Parker did that too, I think. There are some good examples out there, but it's so much more than marketing, right? It's the core of who the business is.
I totally agree. I think everyone references the Tom model when they say, oh, we're going to do some cause marketing, like Tom. And you're like, well, no, Tom built their whole business model around that idea. It wasn't some campaign that they decided to run. It was an integral part of their value proposition. And I think that's the interesting thing between brand purpose and cause marketing. It's almost a little confusing. And Elena and I were talking about this before the podcast. What is the difference? And even when you research it, they blend together. I think we described it as fraternal twins. While they're different, they share the same womb,
Yeah. And it feels like lately maybe some brands are doing more cause marketing, but they're wrapping it up like it's brand purpose. Maybe that'd be a good example of if it's not aligned with who you are as a brand, but you're trying to pass it off as this is who we are, but it's not really what your product might be for. Sometimes it feels like brands use brand purpose more as a Band-Aid or really as just a marketing strategy. Can we get more people if we connect ourselves to a certain cause? But I think that there's also some good examples of purpose that don't necessarily have to be for a social issue. There are things that I'm passionate about that aren't a social issue that I go to certain brands for, like Brooks. I really like that running brand, and they're all about people moving and being active, and I really care about that. So I think any brand really can think about their purpose, but the mistake is maybe where people use it as a Band-Aid to trying to appeal to consumers. And I liked the one quote he had, be on the right side of history. Like brands are just trying to jump on certain causes, and that's when it can come off as disingenuous. And it turns out it doesn't even really work as well. So probably not worth getting in the mix.
Agree.
One thing I want to talk about is just like measurement of stuff like this. I know we share that IPA data on these campaigns are not as effective as normal campaigns. I don't know if we have any thoughts on just like how you would even measure the success of if you're doing like purpose-driven marketing.
To me, it feels like, how do we establish goals and benchmarks for what we want to do as a business? If we're trying to save the planet, if we're trying to serve an underserved audience, if we're trying to provide shoes to countries where they don't have shoes, how many pairs, etc. I think where we go wrong in measurement of something like purpose-driven marketing is when we're starting with Gen Z and we're like, oh, this is all coming from Gen Z. They care about purpose. So how do we then capture that audience and increase sales? Now we're starting to like blend initiatives here in terms of what success looks like. And I think that's where many companies failed in this avenue.
Totally agree. You go back to the fundamentals and go, well, what's your KPI? If you're going to do a cause marketing campaign, is your purpose to give away shoes? Then you can easily measure how many shoes you give away. Or is it we want to increase the bottom line of our sales or look at brand lift over time? But it becomes practical pretty fast to go, what kind of mechanism are we going to put in place after we've figured out what our KPI truly is? And is it to truly be philanthropic or is it to move the bottom line? And if it's both, I think it is important then to make sure you're doing it in a way that people don't smell it to be ingenuous, or it will hurt both.
That leads into another thing I wanted to talk about, which is the consumer. And we just mentioned like Gen Z, like if your whole KPI is appeal to Gen Z, purpose probably isn't the way to go. Like you think it is, but it turns out if you look at their spending habits, their purchases, they don't appear to be as driven by purpose as the narrative is out there. Do we feel like consumers, even the three of us, are we becoming more skeptical of that type of purpose-driven marketing?
I would say yes. I think that the growth and movement that Rob spoke into during the history lesson there presented itself very strongly over the course of several years. And I think there was a lot of press around it too. And then that inauthenticity became more prevalent. And I think Gen Z and non-Gen Z became more aware of what was going on and didn't respond well to it, in my opinion. And so I do think there's greater skepticism of purpose-driven marketing, or people are trying to do a better job of really trying to sort through who does have it at the core of what they're trying to do and who is just trying to paint it on. I don't see it as much anymore. I think it's toned down. Companies felt the impact when they just tried to use it from a marketing perspective. So I think it's less prevalent than it used to be. But yes, I think there's still some skepticism out there.
I agree. And I also think it's interesting to watch, having older teenagers, watch what they value and how do those values connect to brands. And I guess for me, I grew up in the 80s, and the 80s was a very selfish period. That was the values, or at least that's what it was known for, right? Greed is good. And you'd actually walk around school with a pencil in your back pocket so it would keep your shirt up, so that people could see your Guess Jean logo. And I'm not kidding you. That was a thing. And I think this generation would throw up in their mouth over that kind of pomp and circumstance. But that being said, though, they go and shop at like the Goodwill. And that's a thing, like to go around and value shop, because they feel like that connects with their values, and those brands convey those kind of values. It's just so interesting to see how those values align with the brand values. And are those brands doing that intentionally, or is that just a symbiotic relationship that popped up?
It's so hot and cold though, don't you think? I mean, in the same vein, how many Stanley mugs or thermoses or vessels for liquid were sold at $40 plus?
But that was quality, right? They look at that as quality. Oh, well, okay. So let me go with you there, though. I love that. That's a great example, because what became trendy? Drinking water, right? And people are like, we got to stay hydrated. It's like a health thing. And all these kids, they walk around campus with their big, expensive, totally expensive, but I'm saving the world because I'm not using all these plastic bottles now.
I also think of timeless value for all people, but especially young people, is fitting in. So if you can get your brand to be trendy and everyone starts to have it, that's helpful no matter what time it is. And if you can get more young people going to Goodwill, then they're going to bring their friends. And if you can get some young people to buy Yetis, then they're all going to want the same one. And that's sort of always worked.
I want to know the purpose of Temu, because I see the charges on the credit card all of a sudden, like they just keep stacking up now, and they're all $4. But I want to know what this Temu thing is all about. What's their value proposition? Why are they gaining steam?
I think it's cheap products. So that's one reason young people like it. And they're also sort of gamifying shopping, which young people are more used to being constantly entertained by their phones. So I think it's probably the combination.
I think the reality is that as consumers, whether we're young or old, we're driven by a variety of factors, right? Price, gamification, quality, and we're not exactly consistent in how we purchase. We might pay $40 for a thermos when we know there's an acceptable version for $10 or less. But then in another category, might balk at having to pay more than $7 for something. So yeah, there's a lot to consider when we think about how we shop.
One theory I have about brand purpose is that employees might care more about brand purpose than consumers. And that's what drives brands to take a stand on certain things. Do you agree with me on that? I feel like that might be an even bigger driver at this point. Like, I want to work for a company that stands for these values, which is not, I don't think, always fair to ask of the company you're working for. But I wonder if that's also driven the brand purpose movement.
I think employees want a mission. And if it's a mission that aligns with their values as a person, amazing. But I agree with you, like what's important to me might not be important to Rob. And that's where I think companies have a tricky job in terms of trying to get engagement and loyalty out of their employees. And there's a lot of levers to do that. Purpose might be one of them, but it doesn't necessarily appeal to everyone in the same way.
Yeah, I agree. In the early days of Marketing Architects, we were big time into radio. And the flag we waved was, we're changing radio. And that was the cause. And it was a cause where we wanted to help radio stations monetize their inventories. We wanted to help advertisers make radio work. But we were all about changing radio and changing convention. And you knew as an employee when you came on, that's what we're about. And it was very authentic. We weren't co-opting another bumper sticker quarterly. Let's make the thermometer increase on the poster in the restroom company. It just wasn't our thing. And some people like that, some people don't. But we could unapologetically say we were going after changing radio.
It was actually what we were doing, and we believed in it. Where I think is if brands just pick up a political or social cause that isn't core to their company, it seems like a recipe for disaster, because if it's not core to what you do, like you said, Ange, you don't really know how every employee or company feels and what their beliefs are. So chances are you're going to alienate maybe half your company if you latch on to a social cause like that, when you could just lean into the cause of your brand and why you exist.
I think every company needs to align on that mission and vision that can be inspiring for their employees, but companies do exist to increase shareholder value. Jobs exist to feed families, which fuels the economy. There's a lot in that it sometimes feels like gets washed over in terms of our role to society and to the economy. But those are really important factors.
Well, my cause may not be your cause. I believe that The Bear is the greatest show ever made on streaming, but you may not agree with me. But that's my cause. My cause is to get as many people to watch The Bear as possible. I'm going to tell everybody on this podcast, so it's a good show. Check it out.
I don't agree with you, so
nor do I, but you're entitled to your opinion.
One thing I wanted to end with is just to wrap up the conversation. That was a part of that article by Nick Asbury that I really liked, when he talked about how brands exist to sustain families, communities, to create jobs. And that is a purpose in and of itself. And that's a reason to go to work every day and work for a successful company. And that's good work too, to do that in an honest way. So sometimes I think feeling like, oh, well, we need some other sort of higher purpose. There can be mission and goals, but there's also a reason why businesses are for profit and create jobs. So I thought that was a nice way that he wrapped up that article.
Agreed.
To close us out here, I created a little game where I'm going to read some brand purpose statements. And I want to see if you can guess which brands these statements are from. I'll tell you, these are well-known brands, very well-known, but this is probably going to be hard. So, okay. All right. Brand purpose statement number 1. With every cup, with every conversation, with every community, we nurture the limitless possibilities of human connection.
Starbucks?
Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
Yep, you got it.
Oh my gosh.
That's Starbucks. All right. Number 2. To refresh the world, to inspire moments of optimism and happiness, creating a positive impact.
Oh boy.
I'm going to say Coca-Cola.
Over to you, Rob.
Say Coca-Cola.
You're right.
Oh, wow. Good job.
I can't
Rob.
believe you got that one. Wow. Okay, here we go. 2 for 2. Number 3, to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere.
Belong anywhere.
So I'm going to guess Facebook.
I don't think this is right, but I'm going to go with Delta.
No, I was thinking I might guess Delta. It's Airbnb. Number 4, to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more.
Microsoft.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Yep, Microsoft. You're doing this so well.
Oh.
All right. Final one, to move people and society forward by transforming the ways people move and connect.
I was going to say Tesla.
That's what I was going to say too.
But then you said connect, but I'm going to still hold true to that.
I'm going to go with Uber.
Oh, you're so close. It's Ford.
Oh, Ford.
Ford caught us twice.
Yeah, that's twice in a row we didn't get Ford. Well, you did a lot better than I thought you would. So it turns out some of those brand purpose statements are probably good ones. I was trying to find some like really bad, really funny ones, but it actually is pretty difficult. I feel like brands have cleaned up their brand purpose statements.
Starbucks was easy just because you think of them as such a socially driven and every cup of coffee. For me, the Coca-Cola one, I think they've done a really good job of using refresh in their brand. That's what was the trigger for me. It's like when I heard refresh, I'm like, they really own that word. So, and the fact they could incorporate that into their brand statement, like, again, that's great connection, right? Great connective tissue.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Like once you said Coca-Cola, I was like, oh, duh, refresh. Yes, of course. It's a distinctive asset for another episode.
That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Ayana Klaphocky for producing the show and Taylor De Los Reyes for editing. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you find the show valuable, please leave us a rating and review. And if you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. It's built for marketers seeking research-first analysis of the latest trends. You can go to marketingarchitects.com/newsletter to subscribe. Now go forth and build great marketing. That was great. I could have gone without the boogers reference, but great. Thanks, Rob.
Marketing Architects.